Township, January 22nd, 2019. Committee meeting, please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is called pursuant to the Meeting Hall. This meeting of January 22nd, 2019. Sent to the Central Record, Burlington County Times, and the Courier Post. Posted on the Board's Board and Town Hall. It has been named continuously posted as required notices of the statute. In addition, a copy of this communication has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. Roll call, Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Moore.
Here.
Mr. Yates.
Here.
And Mayor Martin.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to do public comment. And public comment, as you know, we have a 3-minute rule. And to expedite things this year, the deputy mayor is going to keep time. At the 3-minute mark, you're going to be put on notice, and you have 15 seconds to wrap up your comments. During that 15 minutes, they have to be your comments. You have to not chastise this committee for anything that they do. You can do that during your normal 3 minutes if that's what you choose to do. So anyone want to talk in the public comment section, please come down, stand in the front here, state your name and address. Mrs. Brooks.
Madam Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. Good evening, everybody. I just would like to make a general comment. I see on closed session you're going to be talking about matters relating to contract and negotiation with the TRS. You know, since the fire district was dissolved through that very strange petition in 2013, there's never been a public discussion by this committee, by anyone on this committee, regarding what the contours of a contract would be, what the components of a contract would be, regardless of who you form a contract with. And that's one of the worst problems, that it is a major problem, because there's been no public discussion. Every discussion about the contract, understandable that a contract would ultimately be done in closed session, but the contours of a contract should be publicly discussed, and that has never happened. And what it has happened since the petition was filed and accepted is that the tail has always been wagging the dog. The TRS has always said jump, and you guys have jumped. And it's time to stop the tail from wagging the dog. It's time for you to take control of the emergency services and act on that control and start having public discussions about what your vision is, because you talked about a centralized vision, efficient services, effective services, but it doesn't look like you really ever had a plan for what that means, other than taking $400,000 to plug a hole in your budget. And I mean, they said get rid of the negotiator because they wanted Mr. Lang to negotiate. They didn't like the person you selected or Mr. Liston. It's time for you to take control of the situation and do something in public for once. And that's my comment.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Anyone else public comment? Mr. Wells?
William Lowe, 24 Hidden Drive, Tabernacle. I, much as I hate to say it, I don't often agree with Mrs. Brooks, and I almost agree with nothing she just said, except for one thing. I don't understand why, if we're going to have a discussion of the contract, at least the parameters of the contract, you can't do that in public. We've done enough and had enough ire and angst about all these relationships and all this stuff. Why don't we just lay it all out? And then when you guys want to get down and do the sign and do the cross the T's and dot the I's, I don't care where you do it. But at least a discussion. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else from the public have a comment? Yes, sir.
Craig Zine, 26 Elmwood Drive.
I'm sorry, what's your name?
Craig Zine, 26 Elmwood Drive. I would actually employ the committee to look at the vacancy of the public person who just listed. remove his position from the township. We don't need it. It's a $12,000 budget item that can be put back into the budget. We're too small of a community to be spending extra money on things like that when we already have capable people in the township. The administrator, you as the committee, to handle these items. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else from the public have comment? Okay, seeing none, close the public comment. Approval of bills?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
A roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Approval of the minutes, this would be the December 27th, 2018 regular minutes and executive minutes.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolutions, 2019-37, authorized refund pursuant to a 100% total disability veteran exemption. A motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
A roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-38, authorize a refund pursuant to a 100% total disability veteran exemption.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-39 has authorized Township Administrator to advertise for other employment to a Deputy Municipal Court Administrator. A motion, a second, and we're going to ask Doug to discuss this.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Kramer?
Okay, as you're all aware that we are working towards a shared service agreement with William Township to use their court facility and combine your two courts together, or manage them as a shared unit, should we say, so combining the courts. We've had ongoing meetings with Burlington County Court Division about setting up exactly how we're going to handle it, what the requirements are going to be. One of the requirements based on the caseload is that we hire a deputy court administrator for more hours than what we're presently using. Presently we have two deputies who act only on court days and come in and handle the load during the court session. They're requiring us to, based on the caseload, to employ a deputy court administrator a minimum of 10 hours per week. And that's what we're advertising for. Once this advertisement is done and we start the interview process, which is quite extensive, along with the officers from the Burlington County court system to help do the interview process, we will get approval from the courts to finally combine and fulfill our shared service reward to Township. So this is the first step.
Okay. Any questions from the committee on this resolution?
Sure.
Okay. Roll call?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-40 authorized permanent appointment of a chief financial officer.
So moved.
Rodney, congratulations. I understand you got all the credentials, and now we can make you a permanent
Yes,
CFO.
I completed the state's requirements back in November. It just took until January 2nd to award the certificate.
Okay, well, congratulations for obtaining the certificate. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Rodney.
Thank you.
Okay, new business. Discussion of Tabernacle Fire Company number one financial budget and auditing matters reassigned to the administrator and the chief financial officer. So this is you and Rodney to discuss.
Okay. Mr. Moore is handling the liaison position with Emergency Services. Has requested that Rodney and I handle financial purchase order system and the overall finances between the township and the fire company. And based on that, Rodney and I have agreed to handle that. And what we need is your approval to move forward to go back to that work to do this.
So no change from prior to when we had a public safety director. This is Rodney's going to be more involved.
Yes.
Okay. Anyone from the committee want to comment? Okay, we'll move the reports and.
Is there a motion for that?
Yes, please. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
Yes.
Mayor Gordon?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, reports. And Mr. Kramer, you're going to take care of Mr. Guzzi's report. He's absent this evening.
Yes, Mr. Gozzi is absent this evening. I'll go over that. Okay, Dan's report, bringing you the update on all the engineering projects that are going on. The salt storage building, the materials are on site, demolition is complete, and there's some additional pricing they're waiting for. When we removed the old roof, we found some additional rot that we had not discovered before, and we're waiting for some comments back from the manufacturer on what is the best way to make the repairs. 2018 road program will work on Powell Place and Torrance Road will commence in the spring. The 2018 park project equipment is expected to be delivered between February 11th and 13th. Concrete work was done. Fence work will be done after the structures are erected, and depending on weather, that will depend on how much longer it takes them to finish that project. The 2018 drainage improvement, all the contract work is done. We did some additional pipe work on Zimmerman Road. After all the rains, we still had a little water left on the roads, and we wanted to have some ability to put some more footage of pipe in, so we have done that. Restoration of the grass areas and the punch list work will begin again in the spring. And our ongoing tax map conversion to a digital form, which we will need for the next, state will require us for stormwater following next year, and in 20 they will require that, and the next time we do a reval, we will need to have that as a master plan for the state. So that is moving along. And that's all I have.
You want to do your administrative report, Mr. Kramer?
Okay. We have had residents' concern was taken to our state legislature concerning the address of Hunter's Lane in Tabernacle and the address of Hunter's Lane in Southampton Township. I had talked to the resident probably earlier last year. I'd asked her to get some input from her neighbors, and that did not occur, but she went to Senator Connor's office and spoke to them, and I had a conversation with his staff, and we decided that with your approval, that we would send a letter to the residents asking them their feelings on changing the street name, or at minimum go to a 3-digit number system, which would take it out of competition with Southampton's. Southampton probably has about 30 residents, we have 5, so it is more cost effective for us to change than them. I realize that this is a cost for the residents. They have their personal legal documents, driver's license, registrations, and that would have to be changed, plus their deeds on their home. And we don't take that cost lightly, so I'm asking for the 5 households to weigh on what they think, and we'll take a look at what the majority feels, and I'll be back to you before we make any changes. But we'd like to be able to send that letter out.
Okay, and Doug, is this strictly for public safety reasons, for better response during an emergency?
It seems to be, they brought up a concern they had with the state police showing up at the wrong address into the senator's office. And the rest of it is pizza delivered to the wrong place. That's not really the issue. The state police showing up. We did talk about the fire company and the rescue squad. There are 2 different grids. It would be sent from central communication, completely different. So I'm gathering that's why we haven't had any issues with our own local emergency services, or Southampton has either. State police, because they're dispatched out of Hamilton instead of Burlington County, depends on which one the trooper remembers and whether they're specific when they make the call. So for safety reasons, we want to consider what the option should be.
So are the house numbers all different between Southampton and Tabernacle?
We have 1 through 6. They have 1 through 30. Apparently, one of the house numbers is particularly active in Southampton that seems to be sending a lot of people to Tabernacle without relaying the number. Apparently, the people in Southampton live life to their fullest.
So is the street changed, the street name changed, or just the number changed? What's the correct?
I'd like to talk to Dan about that.
Okay.
Coming up with another name, I want to do some extensive research on what names are available outside of the 08088 within, so we don't run into changing a name to something that's in Chemung, or changing a name to another name that's in Southampton. The number may be an issue because we've done that. We did that on Powell Place and Powell. We changed the numbers there. We also changed the numbers on Oak Lane versus Oak Drive. Went to a 3-digit number. So my preferred is to change the numbers.
Okay, anything else to report?
We had Heather's Place collection on Saturday. Was successful. We had probably about 30 people come through, and that will be transported tomorrow up to the county. Fortunately, we had mostly rain over the weekend, so that worked out as well as we could anticipate. That's all I have.
And Doug, your road program for cutting back the trees,
Yes.
when are you going to start working at it? And I bring that up for a reason. Recently, there was a fatality in Connecticut where a tree fell on a utility work. There was a nice situation. There was ice on the tree, but we've got a lot of dead trees along the right of way too.
We hope to get back into that program the end of this month. We're finishing up Christmas trees, and weather permitting, we will start back into that. Okay. We did do one road earlier in the month. We worked on Race Lane.
Can we identify what I call a danger tree, a tree that really looks like it could come down? Is that something that you could make a priority to at least identify anything that you think is going to be a problem this winter? Because we did have a lot of winds this weekend.
We've had some leaners. We've taken down probably 5 or 6 leaners this past fall. The most notable one was out near the Falcon Road, the large pond. We have taken down in the last probably 5 or 6 years a little under 200 trees along the right-of-way that were either dead or were structurally unsound. We think we will continue with that program ongoing. This program is trying to address is both overhanging branches over the road and trees that have creeped out in the roadway and reduce the overall width of the road. So we don't have somebody swerving around a tree that's been planted or grown out into the street and cause another issue with another vehicle. So that's our main concern. But we will look at anything that's overhanging. And if we have trees that are sitting back from the road that are on private property, well, I'm asking the men to write those addresses down so we can send them a letter asking them to remove their tree.
Okay, good. Okay. Mr. Wright?
I'll save my time for executive session, Mayor, thank you.
Committeeman Yates?
I have a question about the correspondence letter to Superintendent of the Schools, Mr. Robbins. It states here that we were not interested in purchasing either facility, either Sequoia or the wastewater treatment plant. I remember the wastewater treatment plant, but the school itself, I do not remember us voting on that as a board. That's something that I think the taxpayer should be able to vote on. Put it on as a referendum. Let them make that decision.
Well, in executive session, we discussed a proposal that was sent to us by Mrs. Shoemaker, and that proposal included $1.4 million for the school and for the sewage treatment plant. And we did have a discussion, and the consensus of the committee was not to entertain that proposal. At the time in the meeting, Mr. Lee stood right there and asked me if I would send a letter to the school board to that effect, and I told him I would, and he said, no, don't do that. I'll go to the next meeting. I'll communicate it in person. Since then, I found out he was not at that meeting, and it was not communicated in person, so that's why I replied to the email that the superintendent sent me, and I copied everyone on the committee.
Well, I still feel as though the residents should make that decision, not us. I mean, I understand we're voted in as their representatives, but I mean, there's a lot of things that could be done with that building. I mean, let alone you could put the community center there, move the township building over there, all the offices, consolidate. You could have a library. You could try to get a post office. There's all kinds of things. I mean, we have the room in that building, and I think the residents should make that decision.
Well, that's fair. You know, my opinion, in doing an executive session, it's still the same, is that taxpayers of Tabernacle Township already paid for that building. And there's no need for the Tabernacle Township residents to pay $1.4 million for facilities that they've already paid for and are maintaining. And if the school board wants to make the building available to the public, you know, that's something their board will have to deal with.
I'm just saying, there's needs of the community. We need a community center. We know that the old squad building is, I mean, it's outdated. It's going to cost thousands of dollars to make the repairs that would be needed. I think it'd be, you know, they're wasting money over there when we have an opportunity over here. I think negotiations should take place, but still put it on a referendum.
Well, anyone's welcome to start a referendum if they want to put it on a ballot, to have the public vote on it. That's the right that everyone has.
I'm just saying, I'd like to hear from the public. I really would like to hear their comments on it.
I think it's something
I
that...
may be going down the wrong avenue, but I just think it's a need of the community.
You know, I would suggest the public go to the next school board meeting, if that's how they feel. Address it with the school board. It's their building. It doesn't belong to us.
Well, That's all I have to comment on.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, Committeeman Moore?
I know Stephen's been working on the Verizon stuff with the high-speed internet. We've been playing phone tag a little bit, so I could get a report in his absence today. I wanted to talk to him about it, and I know he did send a letter out, so more to come.
Okay.
I'll let him, he's been really heading it up, so I'd rather him discuss it.
Deputy Mayor Brandt?
I'll pass.
You'll pass, okay. As you see, we advertised that this year we're going to have work sessions, workshops, and we're going to have committee meetings. Today is a committee meeting. On February 11th will be our first workshop, and what I would ask the committee to do is to think of any agenda items that you want to see move forward for calendar year 2019 and send them to myself, our administrator, our clerk, and we'll start putting a list of agenda items that we want to work on in 2019, and we'll be discussing them in the public. Other than that, before we go into executive session, last year there was a discussion that this committee had, and it was a consensus by the committee when Mrs. Brown wanted to have the ability to call into meetings because of the health of her husband. And by the consensus of this committee, it was decided that that was not going to be permitted. Clearly, we don't have the technology to make that work. It is available. But today, Committeeman Lee has contacted so far our attorney, our administrator, and our deputy mayor asking to participate in executive session. Not sure why he didn't contact me since I set the agenda, but he didn't. But what I would ask is, by consensus, do we want to change our opinion and allow Mr. Lee to dial into that closed session meeting? So I'll ask for a consensus of the committee and ask everyone how they feel about that. Would you like to start?
I'll start.
Sure.
I don't have any problem with it. I don't have any problem with myself calling into a meeting, and I certainly don't have any problem for someone else who may have some kind of obstacle that prevents them from being here and wants to participate in the meeting. So I 100% have no problem with someone calling into a meeting and Mr. Lee calling in this evening.
Sam?
I definitely agree. I don't have a problem with it as long as we can continue that amongst the committee if any of us have the same similar problems or issues.
Yep.
I'm all for Mr. Lee calling in.
Okay.
From my understanding, Mr. Lee did reach out to you with email, and you didn't respond.
He sent me an email? Okay, I'll check my email. But he called, he didn't email the other three folks that I'm talking about. But in any event, my personal opinion on this is one of the agenda items that I wanted to put on our first workshop, to revisit this and have the committee, by consensus, agree to have our administrator look into and purchase the proper equipment so that our clerk can record someone calling in, so that we can hear someone that calls in, and that they can hear us clearly, and that the public can also hear that. So we'll discuss that further at our next workshop meeting, and I'm in favor of that also. I believe everyone should be included. With that, Peter, you want to announce our closed session that we're going to be going into?
I believe that the committee is going to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss ongoing litigation in the matter of Fran Brooks versus Tabernacle Township under BURL 104818, that's the docket number. Also, in order to discuss the ongoing contract negotiation and proposed terms and conditions concerning an agreement with Tabernacle Rescue Squad for the provision of emergency medical services. And I've also been asked to do the same with respect to contract negotiation and contract terms concerning the current contract with the fire company.
Okay. With that, we're going to motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. You all can stay here. We're going to go downstairs.
It's time.
Possible Really swinging on perennials.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's, take a good time She's okay.
I mean, but it's every step.
Basement of the Alamo, is that what it is?
Doing all that stuff. She can't, not spending
Over there. Let's know you're ready to start. We're back in regular session? Okay. Okay, we're back in regular session. Any other matters that the committee wants to discuss? Or any other motions?
Okay, I think I'd like to put up for a vote to make a motion on the TRS contract.
And that's the one that's included in tonight's packet, is that correct?
Yes.
The contract and the facilities use agreement, is that right, Sam?
Yes, both of them.
Okay, so I have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, anybody want to talk about this contract and how we came to this conclusion?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get together here, hold on a second. We've did extensive negotiations on it with the attorney and with the TRS. A lot of thought has went into this on both sides. I feel we've come up to, from my opinion, an acceptable agreement for the emergency services here for Tabernacle to benefit our town. And I'm very, proud of some of the dialogue that's happened between all of us. And I think we have something here pretty good, in my opinion.
I'll just add to that, that I think what Sammy's referring to is the lively and thorough and detailed discussion tonight in executive session about all of the terms and conditions and the benefits or burdens included in those agreements. The committee went through meticulously both agreements, everybody's respective positions qualitatively on what was in those respective agreements. There was a certain amount of consensus building that occurred based upon the discussion that was facilitated by the proposed agreement in view of the tremendous amount of dialogue conducted by Sammy directly with the squad, with myself, and with members of the squad, including myself and to some extent their attorney. So, that resulted in tonight in a thorough discussion where each committee member was able to express their views on each individual term, get questions answered, and compare notes with each individual committee member in executive session tonight, resulting, I think, in a fair understanding. And so before that, the committee considered any vote, is there any particular questions or concerns that would like to be expressed by any individual committee member?
Anyone else from the committee? Okay, I wanted to share my thoughts on this whole process, and it's been a process that's taken many years, and we're finally here. And Sammy, I thank you for stepping up as a liaison and being the newest person on the committee, and of course with your background and your work history in public safety, I'm sure it served you well in getting to a contract that we can all agree on. And you've heard me say many times that we had three options here: either get a contract, take over the billing, or go to third party. And I evaluated all three of them over that period of time. I over requested all the calls that the squad had at one point in time over a year period. And I analyzed that, I looked at that. I talked to a lot of folks in town about how the squad operated when they were on Hawkins Road, prior to us even building the building here. Mrs. Brown helped me understand why we built the building as big as we did. That it was not just for the squad, it was to be an emergency services building for everyone. So the fire truck could be there, that we could do rescue, that we could do ambulance, that we could be the best in the county. And I believe we have all the right volunteers to be the best. And when I looked at the different ways, and my good friend Mr. Sudbury back there helped me really understand some things when we put some numbers together and started looking at the different options. You know, do we want to take over the building? Well, why take over the building if they already know what they're doing? Do we really want to do that? We looked at getting a public safety director to try to merge the two organizations together. Unfortunately, we failed with that, and we don't have a public safety director. He resigned, and we accepted his resignation. But when I looked at going to a third-party bill, going to a bid and put this out competitive, right? So if we were to put this out competitive, and a third party was to bid, and if the squad was to bid, I suspect the third party would be successful. The third party probably would be a company that is affiliated with a hospital or a facility where patients would go. So it wouldn't be really a big incentive for them to be in a profit margin, that they could just minimize their cost to provide the service. And what kind of service would we get for that? If I was to do that as a company, and in my career working for a utility for 48 years, I negotiated many, many contracts with union labor, with suppliers worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And when we put contracts together, we put a lot of thought into them. And if I was to put a contract or bid in for that service, I think the first thing I would do, I would find out how many calls do they run in Tabernacle Township, not the surrounding communities. And I would look at those calls and I'd look at those numbers. And from there, I would know what my income stream would be. And from there, I would decide what my expenses were going to be to try to match my income stream. I would probably only put one ambulance in Tabernacle Township with two people who may not even be here all the time. So what does that mean to the residents of Tabernacle Township if we went to a third-party supplier at a lesser cost? It would mean that we still have to pay for the building that's over there, and we have to pay for all the in-kind services that the squad are going to pay for in this contract. And we wouldn't have a second and third ambulance for our residents. They would come from mutual aid. So that's why I drastically changed my feeling on this. And when Sammy got on board and I saw how compassionate he was to try to make this work and how much time and effort he put into it, and he knows you folks better than I do, and he worked with them, and it looks like we have a really good contract, and it looks like it's going to last for a long time into the future to serve the residents so that when they pick up the phone, the service is going to be there. Also, in this contract, you know, we address rescue. How are we going to do rescue in this town? The fire company has rescue equipment. The squad has rescue equipment. And in this contract, there will be a joint rescue. And anyone that's part of the fire company that wants to be part of rescue will be part of the rescue. And so for that reason, I support this. And Sandy, I thank you for your effort.
Thank you, Mayor.
And thank you for bringing a contract that hopefully will put this behind us, and that the fire company and the rescue company will work together, and that when there's an accident, the right equipment will be at the scene, they'll cooperate, they'll work together, and we'll move this forward. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a vote, LaShawn?
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Yates?
That's what the three of them were, yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Boy, that felt good to get that behind us, huh? After all those years. So I implore all of you to please work together and make this work for us. And I'm sure you will. With that, is there any other business for the committee? Okay, we're going to open us up to the public for public comment. Anyone that wants to make a comment, please come down front. State your name and address. Mr. Brooks.
Good evening, Stuart Brooks, Moores Meadow Road. I appreciate, Mr. Mayor, your implorations, if that's a noun, that we all work together. But I gotta tell you, when you condense 5 years worth of work into a 5-minute summary as to why we should get behind this, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that you worked out a great contract, but you sure didn't include the public in any of those discussions. And that's why it's very hard to accept your representations that it was a good process, because it wasn't a good process, or that it's a good contract, and we'll see if it's a good contract. What I remember not too long ago was this committee saying there would be a centralized management, efficient, effective, all sorts of positive adjectives. And that was when you dissolved the fire district. There was never a plan attached to that. It was a decorative statement. Eventually, there did come a time when there was a plan to have a public safety department, a public safety director, an independent person who would manage this. That seems to have gone out the door too. The most recent event is your hand-picked independent expert public safety director who says, the squad's not negotiating with me. Their attorney won't talk with me. And your solution was to let him walk. Yes, he resigned, but he also submitted a letter rescinding that. Let him walk. As a result, the squad has put out language that says, we've negotiated hard and we've got a good contract. And it seems really as if the committee has accepted their contract. The contract will speak for itself, we'll see what it says. But frankly, I think you have failed in bringing the township along in announcing the larger policies and how your actions would implement those policies. And that would come back from a meeting, an executive session, and say, hey, it's great, let's do it. I think you missed the boat in bringing the township along. Other comments I have. How do you envision the Department of Public Safety working? There's no public safety director. I gather there are no plans to hire a new public safety director. We have a liaison to the Public Safety Department. But I also remember this committee saying they did not want to have that direct involvement with the two squads that perform the service. That was a reason to create the public safety director in the first place. So how will that work? I also should point out that, as far as I know, there's only one liaison to any department, and that would be Mr. Moore, who's the liaison to the Public Safety Department. And who's going to manage that department now? Will it be Doug Kramer? Doug Kramer, who's the father of Captain Stephen Kramer, whose 5 years of management of the TRS have numerous numerous events that I don't think have gone well, and I don't mind saying that. I find it surprising that the Chemung agreement got as far as it did, and there was never any discussion of that publicly until months later. So how is that going to work? What's your plan for that? What do you envision?
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mr. Brooks.
I think this would be a great opportunity to answer that, because I know that,
We'll respond.
to my knowledge, it wasn't addressed at the last meeting when those changes were announced.
Thank you for your comments.
Would you be addressing that today and seizing that opportunity? I look forward to it.
Okay, anyone else from the public? Sean?
Sean Colton, 438 Medford Lakes Road. Let me first start with commending with the squad contract. It's about time. The only thing I have to say about that is I can attest firsthand, the fire company will not be willing to work with the squad. I've been told point blank, do not contact the squad for training. That's the only thing I have to say about that. But something I want to share with you. The main reason I want to speak tonight is to clear my name about something I was accused of by the Tabernacle Fire Company. On January 4th, I put in a leave of absence for Tabernacle Fire. I did not wish to continue to run calls due to reasons of safety and, well, just my general treatment towards me. I've numerous occasions left behind, all sorts of stuff, the way I was treated, the way I was talked about. It got to be too much. Immediately right after they started requesting for my items that I have from the fire company, including uniform, key fob, things that are noted there in the letter I just handed you. Well, in past history of Tabernacle Fire Company, people have taken leave of absence. It was not common practice to take these items from them. That was not common practice at all. And towards me, it seemed some sort of special case towards me that they didn't. They wanted to strip me of those things and confiscate them as soon as possible. They even went to the extent of having a lawyer contact me, spend township money, taxpayer money, on going after me with a lawyer. And granted, they did contact me first, and I said I would like to be provided with an SOP saying why, on leave of absence, I need to hand the stuff back. Well, the SOP provided had nothing to do with what I had asked for, so I ignored it. And I actually forwarded it to the township committee. I don't know if everybody got it, but I did forward it to several people sitting here today. I just wanted to bring this up because I have been a member of Tabernacle Fire Company for over 3 years. I've done extensive training in firefighting, rescue, and all sorts of different avenues within the company. And this is the way I'm treated for my dedication. I was one of very few people that actually make their percentages last year. I can actually say that there are 8 certified firefighters that actually made their percentages last year, and that's it, and I'm one of them. And that's the way I was treated. So I just wanted to make sure I brought to light that I am handing these items back, by the way, just so everybody knows. I was in contact with their lawyer. I'll be handing these things back tomorrow at 3:30 to the lawyer. I have those appointments set up, as I do not trust the fire company. If I were to take it back to them, they would most likely say, well, you didn't return these items later on down the line. So I want a receipt for my things. Also, they're giving me back the equipment I have. I just wanted to bring this up, clear my name, because they're accusing me of being a thief, essentially, and that's disgusting after everything I've done for this township, after everything I've done for that fire company, and I cannot believe that the leadership would allow this. And I think tomorrow, given these circumstances, I'm on leave of absence now, just a few more seconds.
15 seconds.
I will most likely put myself on a resignation, and I will not come back until the leadership has changed the Tabernacle Fire. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Sean, I appreciate you bringing this forward to us, but this is a personnel matter between you and the fire company.
I understand, but I just want
I'm
to.
glad that, you know, you are turning it in so that you're not putting yourself at risk.
I just want people to know how Tabernacle Fire. I just want people to know how Tabernacle Fire treats its qualified and dedicated volunteers.
Okay.
That's what needs to be said.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? David?
Janie Wood, I'm president of the Tabernacle Rescue Squad. I wanted to thank you, Mayor, for seeing that we needed a change in our committee structure, that after 3 years we weren't getting any movement. And I will attest to your newcomer, Mr. Morgan, really put forth a great effort. We had a lot of long conversations. He did his homework, asked a lot of tough questions, obviously talked to surrounding towns, back and forth with Mr. Lang, which, you know, we've been doing back and forth for 3 years, but I think the expertise and the hard work that Sammy did with you being able to bring a fresh set of eyes in to look at this instead of the same thing being repetitive really made the difference. And us as volunteers appreciate that we finally can come to a close and get back to the job at hand and not worry about this anymore, but to go forward and take care of our patients in our community like we always have. So thank you for taking the time to do that and passing the resolution or the contract tonight so we can move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. Was Mr. Haynes in the meeting, the executive session tonight?
I'm sorry?
Was Mr. Haynes in the executive session tonight?
He was.
And what was his role in that executive session?
In the executive session, he's our chief financial officer.
So what does that have to do with discussing my case and the TRS contract? Why should he be involved in it?
Like I said, he's our chief financial officer. He keeps track of all our books and our numbers. I see no reason he couldn't be there.
Okay. How much are we going to be paying the deputy court clerk? What's the salary on that? Have you figured that out, or what?
Was that set by the court administration, then?
It's $18 an hour.
Okay, and how much are we paying Woodland Township? And how many hours? 10 hours a week, so at $18 an hour. And how much are we paying Woodland Township?
I'm not done with that agreement yet.
Okay. You're not done, does that mean that if you're not done with the agreement, does that mean there is a final agreement that the Tabernacle plans to go through with moving court to Woodland, or is that still a question?
Still a question with the Brunswick County Court System.
No, but is it a question with the committee? Does the committee intend to move court to Woodland, and what is going to be the cost?
I can't speak for the committee.
Well, you have the numbers, Mr. Kramer. You know what we take in. You know what we're paying Woodland. Is this going to be advantageous to Tabernacle? Or is it or isn't it? You can't answer a question that you're an administrator, that as administrator, you should be able to answer? I guess not. Well, that's unfortunate. That's sad. And since we have a liaison to emergency services, are we building a new town hall? Is there going to be are you going to have a new space committee? I think that's what you called it before. Is there going to be a needs assessment done? Since it's obvious you've lost interest in that building across the road. What are you doing in terms of doing a building land needs assessment for this township? And are you no longer talking about building a new town hall?
Not at this time, unless someone on the committee wants to bring up an idea for a new town hall.
Okay, so that's off, and how about Public Works? Are you going to be moving Public Works? Is that off the table too?
As of right now, we haven't discussed it, Mr. Brooks.
Okay, and are you going to be doing
We've
a
looked
new
at all those
space committee?
things, but nothing's been moved forward.
Okay, and do you have a liaison? Are you going to be appointing a liaison from the committee to handle to handle all the other issues like public work, departments like Public Works and
At this time,
yeah,
no.
so no more liaisons, just the liaison.
If the committee decides by a consensus that they want to have a liaison to have oversight over another department, then this committee will have that.
Okay, my final comment has to do with the contract. Is the contract now going to be available to the public? Because
Okay.
nothing you've done since 2013 has ever been done in the public with regard to emergency services. I just hope that the provisions of that contract do help this community, do service our tax base, do service the taxes that we have to pay, because our benefit to us, because so far, what I've heard about the contract is fairly disappointing. I mean, we're just talking in general.
About the contract and from whom?
The contract between the township and the
current
Tabernacle
version?
Rescue
You've
Squad.
heard about the current version? I'm just wondering who
The
you
current-
heard that from.
That's my sources, that's not for you to know.
Well, it's all been discussed in executive session, so I'm trying to discover.
Everything
how you
in
may
this
have
town
obtained
is
that
out in the
information.
public, Mr. Lang. There's nothing,
You asked
everything
questions, I'm
is.
asking you the same question. How did you find out that information?
It's rumored all over this town. It's
Okay.
rumors all over the town.
So you're commenting on rumors?
Well, all I'm saying is that the things that I've heard don't bode well for the taxpayers. And whether you want to call it rumors or whatever, I just know what I've heard from multiple sources. And my sources are anonymous, and I've come under the shield law, so you're not going to get those sources.
Thank you for your
And
comments,
so,
Mrs. Brooks. Your time is up. Thank you.
yes, so well, would you answer the question?
Yeah, as
please,
far
will
as the
contract be
contract, once the
available?
contract is executed, it will be made available to the public.
And when is that going to be executed?
Whatever time it takes it to be executed between the squad and us. I don't have an exact date, you know. We'll sign it, we'll send it to them, they'll sign it. When both parties sign it and it comes back, it's executed, it's an available document.
Well, that's not totally true, because it doesn't have to be a completed contract in order for it to be completely executed, in order for it to be a public document. You've agreed to the contract, so it should be a public
Okay,
document.
well, I'll defer that to our
Okay.
attorney. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Mr. Love?
William Love, 24 Hidden Drive, Tabernacle. I feel like I used to feel when I come in to give a report from emergency stand after a budget session. I don't want to talk about emergency services. No. I would like to talk about what Mr. Yates brought up about the school number 1. And I'd like to encourage you to look at that. and to look at the use of that school and what it could do. We wouldn't have to spend any more money except to tear it down, the rescue squad, build the old squad building. We could relieve some of the pressure on here. We have a library. We can even look at whether or not we can have a post office, which would be really nice. And it just seems to me that we ought to at least look at it, and so I request that y'all look at it. Now, if that takes, and I don't think that I should have to go to the school board to get, they don't represent me, they don't represent me. But if it takes that I have to go and get a petition, and a petition to get a referendum, if we want to go through that process, I'll be glad to do it if that's what you want. But I would like you to start with at least discussing it and discussing it in public, because it makes sense to me. It's part of the bill. It's right here. I hate to see it sold out and become senior citizens housing or whatever the rumors are that it's going to be used for, or torn down, which would be even worse. So I would encourage you to do that.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lowe, the reason I said go to the school board, because the school board owns the building, it's not our.
I know that's
right. So it's their building, and it's up to them to determine what they want to do with that building. Now, they did have an offer for us to purchase the building, and by consensus, we agreed we did not want to purchase the building. Now, what they're going to do with the building, since that reply, they can tell you best.
But I think that you're the guys that represent me. And they should answer to you.
But they
You're
also
responsible for
represent
what
you.
goes on in this township. And quite frankly, right now, they're putting money into that building to maintain it. And so if they're willing to keep putting money down the hole and just have it sit there, I guess that's up to them. But if they can't work out, and it seems like a bunch of intelligent people ought to be able to get together and work out some kind of compromise. We get some sort of lease, rent, own, purchase, whatever it might be, but there ought to be a process. And like I say, if it takes what you want is for me to do a petition, to do a referendum, to do all the rest of it, I'm glad to do that. Just tell me if that's what you want. But I'm not going to the school board. I'm going to keep coming to you, because you represent me.
Well,
I don't like them.
Well, we collect your school taxes, and I appreciate that, and they go to council, but we collect your taxes, and we give it to the school board, and you vote their members, and, you know, it starts with them.
Mayor, it starts with you, because I voted for you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Ms. Berger?
Kathy Berger, 18 Woodside Drive. I am going to open the draft document because I am entitled to that, so just so you know, the draft is available. So I will expect that tomorrow morning when I hand it in, because it should be an immediate release. I am so frustrated right now with you guys, and I'm trying to control myself. I could have predicted all this was going to happen this evening. You didn't release your agenda till today after 12 o'clock. Typical when you're going to plan something sneaky and throw something on the agenda. Knew you were going to discuss the TRS contract, and yes, it is out there publicly that things have been discussed. I can tell you that under discussions under Mr. Liston, documents were handed out through the negotiating people and sent out about the horrible things he was requesting. So just so you know, people in your negotiating groups talk. So I just feel that you do such a disservice to the public when you are not transparent. And I've asked this for probably over 4 years now. It doesn't hurt to get your agenda out so that we can see what's going on. And did you have to make the decision tonight on the contract? No. You could have put it on your next agenda and just done it so it was out there for everyone to know it was coming. If any of us had left tonight, it would have been up, there they go again. I don't leave because this is what I think is going to happen. So, thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You seem upset about the process, and I can appreciate it.
I'm very upset about the process right now. I'm furious.
And I'm sensitive to that, because you're somebody whose opinion I respect, and I find you to be a fine professional in your own right. So I'm just curious, what would you have had them do differently about the process as it occurred in getting to a final contract that they ultimately did adopt tonight?
I think I would have listed it on the agenda.
Well,
You could have pulled it.
It was on the agenda though, right?
No, not as you were going to vote on the contract. You had it on as an executive session. Not that you were going to vote on a contract. And I think it should have said it.
Yeah, they were going to vote.
And I think a document should have been available for all. I find it interesting that your agenda didn't come out till noon, which I would hope that meant if it wasn't available for the public, that all of you didn't have it ahead of time. So if you didn't have it ahead of time, then that means in 20 days we've negotiated a contract. And just so everyone knows, I think it's great that we'll have a contract. I'm hoping it's good. I don't know because I can't see it. But I'm glad we're going to have a contract. But in 20 days we've negotiated a full contract where we weren't even talking before and we were at complete opposite ends. So if you didn't get your agenda till today at noon, and most of you were, when did you have time to sit down and absorb all this language if you haven't been talking prior to tonight?
We just spent a couple hours in the.
You did, but 2 hours still is a lot to absorb if it's a full contract like I'm expecting it to be.
Well, we went through the contract line by line, you know.
Okay.
So, and we went through all of the terms and people's different opinions concerning the terms. So I accept your criticism about the agenda. I don't know about the particulars of the agenda and when it was released or otherwise. But in my view, you know, these contracts to be negotiated in public and to be debated in public sometimes, and have proved in this case to inhibit ultimately getting to an agreement and to finally having a consensus among the committee. So I think that it is important that these contracts be negotiated out of the public view until the point that they're ready, okay? So that and you have an idea of where the committee stands. And then, of course, it is a public document at that point. Which
I totally agree with you. I'm not saying negotiate in public. I'm saying let the public know that an action is going to be before the committee tonight.
And list that specifically on there.
That's what I have a problem with, and it continues to happen, and I'm tired of it.
Right, so and I don't reject that it should have said specifically, you're going to vote or likely going to vote. But in all fairness to the committee, I don't think that they knew that until we got into executive session, so that all of the terms and particulars could be negotiated, discussed, a consensus could be built. And then I think once there was an indication in executive session that, you know, that ratification, that consensus was there, given the history of this, given the back and forth, given the coming up to the precipice of an agreement and then being pulled back again, I think caused them, and I can't speak for them, to move tonight to consider the agreement. So I'm not insensitive to your comments. In fact, I'm very sensitive to your comments and to that of Brooks, quite frankly. But I think it is appropriate to negotiate these in private session with members of the committee, whether it be a subcommittee or a liaison. But the idea that you put them out there for public consumption and that you invite necessarily public comment on the terms and conditions after that consensus building occurs, I'm not sure that that's not counterproductive in certain circumstances. Here it has proved to be very counterproductive.
And I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for your actions to be out there in public. The intention, that's all I'm asking for. It could have been listed tonight knowing that negotiations went well, and the intent was if people agreed that it would be out there.
Because Sammy knew the idea that he might be able to
Correct.
get
He knew
this
that
done.
the other side was agreeable to it. I'm sure he's talked to one or two people of, I feel things are going well. Maybe not details, but things are going
So
well.
be a little more
You
transparent
list
saying
it,
that it may be acted
correct,
upon
you
or
list
something
it,
like that.
and you pull it, or you say, we don't need discussion on that, if that's the case. I'm tired of these things happening after 10 o'clock at night like this, and nobody knew it was gonna happen. But I could have told you it was gonna happen.
Well, I'm happy to hear about that in the future, and I'm not insensitive to those comments, so if you'd like to talk to me more about that, I invite that, and I'll try to absorb that and react to that in a positive way and share that with the committee to the
I
extent that.
appreciate that, and I think I've tried to talk to the committee about it. That's why I'm so frustrated tonight.
Well, we'll see if we can address that more effectively.
And I am sorry to hear what I heard about the fire company tonight, but I'm just gonna say again, I told you you have a problem, and I don't think anyone's looking at it. And I think it's time, after what we heard tonight, we need to really delve in. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Brooks, I did want to respond to your question about how we're going to handle public safety moving forward. So it'll basically be the same as it was before we had a public safety director, our administrator. With the help of our liaison to public safety, we'll have oversight and be responsible for paying all the invoices, et cetera, and day-to-day operations of emergency services in Tabernacle Township. Okay, see you more.
Mayor, can I ask that in the vein of that, and Kathy is right with respect to the availability of that document, I would ask that you consider asking your clerk to go ahead and put that agreement on the website. It would be available for immediate release. You have adopted it as the form of content, so there should be nothing that would prevent you from doing that, irrespective of whether or not it's signed. The expectation is it will be signed. That remains to be seen, but nevertheless, it should be immediately available. Okay.
That's it, thank you.
Okay, with that, a motion to adjourn. All in favor?
See what posted.
I will have thanks.
You good with your stuff? Pissed. Can't even describe to you how pissed I am. I am.
So